Hey Army, it's me Taehyung. I just wanted to say thank you for always being there, for every moment we've shared the laughs, the tears, the music that connects us. Tonight, I want to take you behind the scenes of a moment you've seen online to tell you what it really felt like, what was going through my mind when I faced questions, challenges, and truths on live television. This one's for you. I could feel the bright studio lights warming my skin the moment I stepped onto the stage. Even before I sat down, I knew something was off. The crowd wasn't buzzing the way fans buzz. It wasn't excitement I heard, it was anticipation. The kind of anticipation people have when they expect someone to fall, not shine. I've spent years reading rooms, navigating the industry, surviving conversations designed to corner me, and this room was hungry for drama. At the center of that hunger was Ethan Caldwell, America's favorite liberal talk show host, famous for pretending to be friendly before twisting interviews into public executions. People applauded him for exposing hypocrisy, but most of the time he only exposed insecurity, his own. When I reached him, he stood to greet me. His handshake was firm, too firm. His smile polished, yet empty. I could see the tension in his jaw. He wasn't excited to talk with me. He was excited to attack me. But I didn't let it show. I simply sat down, crossed one leg over the other, and smiled. Everyone expected me to be polite, soft, naive, the sweet Korean idol who bows until someone tells him who he's allowed to be. But tonight wasn't going to be that version of me. Ethan leaned forward, pretending to be warm. Not every day we get a K-pop star with controversial opinions in this chair. The audience laughed. Cameras zoomed in. People grabbed their phones. That was his first strike. Paint me as a joke. Paint me as someone out of his depth. So everything I say later loses credibility. I didn't even blink. I folded my hands in my lap and kept my voice calm. Let's see where this goes, Ethan. And just like that, I watched the smirk on his face tighten. The audience shifted. They expected a performance. I was giving them truth. He didn't waste time. So let's start with the elephant in the room. You've been labeled a conspiracy theorist for speaking against global institutions and media manipulation. Do you really think your views have any credibility? The audience laughed again louder. They thought I was trapped. I leaned forward slightly and looked straight into his eyes. You mean the same media that twists stories for clicks, misrepresents people to create villains, and silences anyone who challenges the mainstream narrative? Gasps. Chairs creaked. The laughter vanished. Ethan blinked. He wasn't expecting me to hit back that quickly. He wanted me defensive. Instead, I turned the spotlight around back on him and the system that rewards the destruction of truth. Tell me, Ethan, I continued, keeping my tone gentle, almost soft, because softness hurts more than anger in moments like this. At what point does questioning the narrative become dangerous? When someone asks once, twice, or only years later, when what the media called misinformation turns out to be true? Silence, real silence. Ethan forced a breath through his nose and flipped through his cue cards, the cards designed to break me. Clever way to dodge. But let's be real. You've questioned the media, the entertainment industry, even public health. Public health experts? I interrupted smoothly. You mean the same ones who told people one day that concerts were safe and the next day they weren't, depending on which corporations were sponsoring events? The crowd reacted immediately. A loud, low ooh. Not laughter agreement. Ethan's jaw flexed. I leaned back in my chair again, calm, composed, unshaken. I wasn't arguing. I was dismantling. If questioning official narratives is dangerous, I said quietly, maybe the problem isn't the questions. Maybe it's the answers. Another gasp from the crowd. Ethan stared at me with widening eyes. For a moment, he didn't have a reply. He tried to regain control by appealing to authority. Well, respected media analysts disagree with you. This is where most guests backpedal, but not me. Which analysts? I asked. The ones funded by entertainment conglomerates that own record labels and media networks? The audience erupted. Laughter, claps, cheers. And I didn't even raise my voice. Come on, Ethan pressed, pretending to laugh. Are you saying every expert who disagrees with you is compromised? Not every expert, I replied, just the ones you put on television. More applause. His fan base, his own audience, wasn't on his side anymore. He tried again, desperate. It sounds like you are playing the victim here. Are you suggesting the media is unfair to you? I actually laughed, not angrily, genuinely. You mean the same media that called BTS manufactured before they even learned our story? The same media that mocked us when we entered the US charts, then begged for interviews when we topped Billboard? The same media claiming to promote Asian representation while dismissing us as a fad? The crowd exploded again. Ethan flinched. I wasn't finished. The same industry that preaches mental health advocacy but pressures idols to work until they collapse on stage? People stood, people cheered, a few whistled. Ethan tried to interrupt Taehyung. I lifted my hand slightly. Not aggressive, just enough to stop him. The media isn't here to tell the truth, it's here to protect power. When it fits their narrative, they pretend to be watchdogs. But when it threatens their interests, they become lapdogs. The audience was fully mine now. And I wasn't even trying to win. I was just telling the truth. Ethan was losing control. I could see it in the way his shoulders tightened, in how his smile was disappearing. But he wasn't ready to give up. Desperation makes people dangerous. He pivoted to climate policy, something he thought would destroy me. You've questioned certain climate policies. Are you saying climate change isn't real? The audience waited for me to implode. Ethan thought he had the perfect trap. Don't misrepresent me, I said instantly. His smile froze. Of course, the climate is changing. The real question is whether the people in charge actually want solutions or just control. The studio shook with applause. Even some of Ethan's loyal fans nodded in agreement. I pressed forward, voice steady. Real environmentalism is about cleaning water, protecting air, and stopping corporations from poisoning our food. But instead, politicians tax ordinary people while billionaires fly private jets to climate summits. So tell me, who's the real problem? The audience roared. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. I watched him swallow his panic, but he kept fighting. He tried a fake moral attack. You've been accused of spreading misinformation about mental health and industry practices. Aren't you endangering people? It tilted my head, almost amused. If it's misinformation, why did multiple labels rewrite artists' contracts after pressure from fans and human rights groups? Why did agencies deny overworking idols, then later admit it had caused collapses on stage? Why did streaming platforms deny algorithm manipulation, then suddenly change systems without explanation? Gasps. Ethan froze. I'm not against the industry, I said. I'm against corruption. And if calling out corruption is a problem, maybe that tells us everything. More cheers, more applause. Some people stood again. Ethan's fingers dug into his pen like he could hold himself together through force alone. He had lost control of the interview, of the crowd, of the narrative. But he had one last shot, the trap that most public figures fall for. You're popular, sure, but your views don't align with political or industry leadership? Do you really think you can influence anything? I didn't even blink. That's exactly why I can. Boom. The crowd didn't respond immediately. They froze, absorbing it. Then the explosion hit cheers so loud the microphones nearly peaked. I leaned in unshakably calm. People are tired of being lied to by both sides. They're tired of corporations pretending to care, of media telling them what to think, of insiders treating the world like a private club. I'm not here to fit into their labels. I'm here to tell the truth. And judging by the reaction, I gestured to the crowd still standing, still cheering. People are ready for that. And in that moment, I watched Ethan's expression collapse. His show was no longer his. The audience was no longer his. The narrative was no longer his. He knew it. Everyone knew it. And I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to smile or brag or celebrate. I simply sat there, calm and collected, knowing exactly what just happened. The moment I settled into the chair under the stage lights, I could feel every pair of eyes on me. The cameras, the audience, the producers, the millions watching from home. But the one gaze that stood out the most came from Ethan, the host, sitting across from me. It wasn't curiosity, it wasn't admiration. It was something I'd seen before, the look of someone who thinks they can play with you. I have met many people like him throughout my career. People who believe idols are puppets. People who think music born from sincerity is nothing more than a product packaged for profit. People who underestimate what we represent, not just fame, but millions of dreams around the world. And I could sense clearly, before he even spoke a word, that tonight would not be a gentle conversation. He was waiting to take a swing. The only question was when. I rested my hands calmly on my lap. I smiled politely. I inhaled quietly, reminding myself that the truth does not need to be loud. I didn't come here to fight, but I also didn't come to allow someone to disrespect BTS, ARMY, or the years of blood and dedication behind everything we built. The first questions were harmless, surface level compliments, casual jokes, the cheerful tone every host uses before unsheathing the blade. I answered with grace. I laughed when appropriate. I let him set the tone. And then, exactly as I expected, he shifted. So, Taehyung, he began, smiling for the camera while sharpening his words beneath his breath. A lot of people think BTS is just, well, a commercial product, manufactured, marketed perfectly to make money, not real artists, just a brand. What do you say to that? I heard a few surprised reactions from the audience, some gasps, some whispers. I could feel the sudden tension in the room. Even the band members fell silent behind the stage. In that moment, I realized I had two choices. I could take the easy route, the safe diplomatic answer, or I could speak the truth for my brothers, for our journey, for ARMY. So I looked at Ethan straight in the eyes, not aggressively, but with the calm certainty of someone who knows exactly who he is and exactly where he stands. We are not a product, I answered softly. We are people. And everything we create comes from real emotions and real experiences. Nothing about us was manufactured. We didn't come from privilege, and no one opened the door for us. We fought for everything together. The audience grew silent. Not even a cough echoed across the studio. Ethan tried to interrupt, but I continued slowly, clearly, and without flinching. We didn't become who we are because we were packaged. We became who we are because millions of people felt something from our music, from our sincerity, from our pain and our hope. You can't manufacture that. I could see the flicker of frustration in his eyes, not because he was offended, but because he realized his attempt didn't work. He forced a laugh. Well, I mean, you definitely have a great marketing team. Come on, you must admit that. This time I smiled not politely, but knowingly. Marketing may introduce us, I replied, but only truth can keep us alive for more than a decade. The audience erupted applause, cheers, whistles. It wasn't a dramatic explosion, but a thunder of approval that came from their hearts. And for the first time since the interview began, Ethan lost control of the room. I sat quietly, not soaking in the praise, not riding the applause, just letting the silence after my words settle. This wasn't about winning or humiliating someone. This was about showing that BTS didn't survive through manipulation or spectacle. We survive because we are real. And at that moment, I understood something. Ethan wasn't finished. I could sense the next attack forming in his mind. He wanted another chance to take a hit, something deeper, something more personal. And I was ready for it. The applause settled slowly, like a wave returning to the ocean. Ethan waited for the noise to die down, but even after the claps faded, the room didn't reset. The balance of power had shifted. The audience wasn't on his side anymore, they were on mine. And he could feel it. The control he usually held in his interviews was slipping, and he was desperate to get it back. So, he said, leaning forward, forcing a light laugh, if BTS is so genuine, why do critics say your fans are just blindly obsessed? That they don't really care about your music, they only care about the fantasy of you? His tone was casual, but the attack was sharp. It wasn't about us anymore. It was about ARMY. The millions of people who trusted us, people who cried with us, fought for us, grew with us, people who stayed through everything: scandals, separations, hate comments, exhaustion, fear. He chose the wrong target. I straightened my back slightly, not aggressively, simply to make sure my voice carried weight. I didn't look at him. I looked directly into the main camera, speaking to the people who mattered. They are not obsessed, I said. They are loyal. There is a difference. The audience held their breath. I continued. People don't love us because we're perfect. They love us because we're human, because we show our flaws, Because we don't pretend everything is okay when it isn't. They connect to what we feel: happiness, pain, fear, love, loneliness. They see their reflections in us. That isn't obsession, that's understanding. Ethan blinked rapidly, his poker face fading. But I didn't let the silence settle this time. I pressed forward calmly, every word measured. Army doesn't worship us. They walk with us. They grow with us. They stay, not because we belong to them, but because they know they belong somewhere with us. A soft gasp rose from the crowd, not dramatic, just emotional. I could see tears forming in the eyes of a few young fans in the front row. The moment was real to fake. Ethan shifted again, trying to laugh it off. Okay, that's sweet. But surely you know BTS fans are often labeled as toxic, right? Overprotective, too sensitive, too emotional, sometimes too loud. I didn't even blink. Yes, because they care, I answered instantly. Loving something loudly isn't toxic. Mocking something loudly is. The room exploded. Cheers, applause, even people standing. The camera operators exchanged. Looks like they had just witnessed history being made. Ethan tried to smile, but it was tight forced. He had underestimated me, and worse, he had underestimated ARMY. I continued before he could regain footing. People call fans toxic when they defend the artist they love, I said. But no one says anything about people who insult artists for entertainment. If kindness is considered weakness, then I'm proud that ARMY chooses kindness every time. This time, the applause wasn't just loud, it was unstoppable. The energy in the studio shifted completely. It wasn't entertainment anymore. It was truth. And truth changes the atmosphere of any room. I sat back, letting the clapping continue. I didn't look victorious. I didn't smirk. I didn't act like I won. Because this wasn't a battle, it was clarity. But Ethan was not ready to surrender. I saw it in the way he clenched his cue cards, the way his jaw tightened before he spoke. His eyes sharpened with a new strategy, not about BTS, not about ARMY, but about me. So, Taehyung, he said quietly, dropping the cheerful tone, if everything you said is true, then why did you disappear from the spotlight for months? Why did you take a break if this journey is so meaningful to you? Did the pressure finally get to you? The crowd reacted immediately, gasps, whispers, shock. He didn't just throw a punch. He hit the deepest part of me, the time when I needed to step back, to breathe, to understand myself, to heal away from cameras. But I didn't flinch because I had promised myself one thing. If I ever told my story, I would tell it honestly. I took a slow breath, lifted my head, and prepared to answer, not to defend myself, but to speak my truth fully, unapologetically, and without shame. The studio fell into an uneasy silence after Ethan's question. It wasn't the kind of silence that follows excitement, it was the kind that follows impact. He knew exactly where to strike, and he aimed straight for a part of my life that had been heavy, personal, and misunderstood by many. It wasn't a question designed to understand me. It was a question designed to expose me. But I didn't lower my gaze. I didn't hide behind a polite smile. I didn't try to change the subject. If he wanted the truth, I would give him the truth on my terms. I leaned forward slightly, not to attack, but to speak clearly. I took a break, I said, because I'm human. The audience didn't clap, they didn't gasp, they just listened. You can love what you do with your whole heart, I continued, and still get tired. You can be grateful for your life and still feel overwhelmed. You can have millions of people supporting you and still need time to understand who you are when the noise stops. Ethan shifted in his seat. He wasn't expecting an answer that disarmed the narrative instead of running from it. I didn't disappear because I was weak, I said. I stepped back because strength without rest becomes self-destruction. I needed time to breathe, to live, to stop being Taehyung, the public figure, and remember who I was as Kim Taehyung. The crowd listened with absolute focus. No cheering, no interruption. They weren't just watching a guest on a talk show, they were watching someone remove the armor the world expected him to wear. I continued with honesty. I hadn't spoken out loud before. When you grow up in front of cameras, you can forget what silence sounds like. You can forget how to feel something without performing it. You can forget what it's like to cry without a headline being written about it. And I didn't want to forget who I really am. Ethan tried to interject with a fake sympathetic tone. Well, fame can be difficult, I'm sure. I cut him off gently, without aggression, but with certainty. It isn't fame that hurts, I said. It's having your humanity denied. The audience gasped softly, not because the line was dramatic, but because it was true. The world thinks idols don't break, I added. But we do. We just do it quietly because we're afraid to disappoint the people who love us. I watched as the crowd's expressions shifted. Some lowered their heads, some teared up, some nodded. They understood, not as fans, but as people. And when I came back, I said I didn't return because I felt pressured. I returned because I missed the stage. I missed my members. I missed ARMY. Not because I needed applause, but because I needed connection. For the first time the entire evening, Ethan wasn't holding eye contact. He didn't know what to say. His attack had turned into a doorway, and instead of collapsing, I walked through it freely. But the moment wasn't over, I wasn't done. I'm not ashamed that I took a break, I continued. I'm proud of it because I came back stronger, not for the industry, not for the business, not for expectations, but for myself. The audience erupted. Not instantly as if they needed a few seconds to return to reality, and then the cheers filled the studio louder than before. Not applause for entertainment, applause for vulnerability. I sat back again, breathing softly, feeling my chest warm not from adrenaline, but from relief. The story I once hid had become my shield. Ethan waited for the crowd to calm down, and then, desperate to take back control, he tried again. Well, he said, forcing a grin. That's great. But let's be honest, a lot of people still think BTS relies too heavily on emotional storytelling to get sympathy. Some say you play the victim to stay relevant. The studio reacted boos, groans, disbelief. People stared at him in shock. Even the camera operator shook his head. I didn't even wait for complete silence. I don't need sympathy, I said calmly, and BTS has never needed sympathy. We don't ask people to feel sorry for us. We ask them to feel with us. The crowd cheered again, Louder, rawer. I looked straight at Ethan. No fear, no hesitation. People listen to us because we are honest, I said. And if honesty threatens you, maybe it's not us you're uncomfortable with, maybe it's yourself. The room exploded applause, screams, whistles, people rising from their seats. Even some staff near the stage started clapping. And right there, in the middle of the chaos, Ethan Caldwell, the man known for destroying guests on live television, sat frozen, unable to respond. But the interview wasn't done yet. I knew he was running out of angles, but he would try one more time and it would be his biggest mistake of the night. Because next, he would ask a question about BTS's future. And I was ready. The energy in the room was no longer something anyone could control. The audience wasn't just watching, they were invested. They weren't reacting because the cameras were on, they were reacting because something real was happening in front of them. And Ethan knew it. The interview that was supposed to mock BTS had transformed into a moment he couldn't escape from. He kept shifting in his seat, his cue cards trembling slightly in his hand. But he forced a smirk, trying to recover the role he was famous for, the host who always had the upper hand. So, he said, his tone sharper now, if BTS is as unstoppable and genuine as you say, explain this. Why are people saying BTS is finished? Why do so many outlets claim you'll break up soon? Fans are worried. The media is already writing your ending. Maybe it's time to admit that the BTS era is over. The audience immediately erupted in outraged shouts, gasps, boos. The producers looked panicked. Even before I responded, the crowd knew that he had crossed a line. But I didn't flinch. I didn't look angry. I simply folded my hands and let the silence stretch, not because I didn't know how to answer, but because I wanted my voice to land like a truth no one could twist. When the room finally quieted, I spoke slowly, clearly, with no hesitation. BTS is not finished, I said. BTS is evolving. The room shifted instantly, breath held, hearts opened. We don't exist to repeat the same chapter forever, I continued. We exist to grow as artists, as individuals, as men. Distance doesn't destroy us. Time doesn't destroy us. Change doesn't destroy us. Love survives all of that. I let the words sink in before I added. You don't break up a family just because they're walking different paths for a moment. The audience exploded cheers, applause piling over applause. Ethan tried speaking over the noise but failed. And when the crowd finally calmed enough for him to talk again, he leaned forward with a fake grin, but this time his frustration was visible. Well, if that's true, he said, then why do people say some of you will leave the group eventually? Isn't it normal that success separates people? Different careers, different dreams, different priorities? I mean, that's reality. I smiled, not sarcastically, not defensively, but with complete confidence. You're right, I replied. That is reality. People grow, people change, people chase dreams. But here's what you don't understand. Our dreams were built together. The room fell silent again, captivated. I didn't choose BTS because it was easy, I said. I chose BTS because it was real. And I didn't stay because I had to. I stay because I want to. Because my happiness isn't measured by my success alone. It's measured by seeing the people I love succeed with me. Someone in the front row started crying. Another person covered their mouth, trying not to sob. The truth wasn't just being spoken, it was being felt. We're not afraid of time apart, I continued. We're afraid of living a life where we stop cheering for each other. The audience stood applause so loud the microphones shook. But I wasn't done. People wait for our ending because endings are easy to write. But BTS has never been easy. We're not a moment. We're not a trend. We're not a season. We are a history still being written. Ethan had no words. Not a single comeback, not a single sarcastic line, not a single insult prepared for that, but instead of letting the room rest, he went for one final attempt, one last desperate question. So what happens, he said, voice tight, when the world finally moves on, when people stop caring? What will you do then? This was supposed to scare me to show that fame is temporary, that success fades. But I wasn't afraid. I leaned forward slightly, my voice soft but unshakably strong. When the world moves on, I said, I'll still have a life that I'm proud of, music that tells my story, people I love, and fans who know me not because I'm trending, but because I'm me. The room went silent, almost holy. Then I finished, and when the world moves on, it won't feel like a loss. It will feel like we did what we were born to do, and we did it well. With that, the audience erupted, the loudest reaction of the entire night. People stood, clapped, screamed, even lifted BTS banners they had hidden in their bags. The studio turned into a stadium. I had no intention of humiliating Ethan, but he had created a battlefield, and I had walked through it without losing my humanity. And that, more than anything, is what destroyed him. But the interview wasn't over yet, because up next, Ethan would ask the question that would change everything. A question about love. And the moment he did, the studio would break. The studio was still shaking with applause from my last answer when Ethan decided to make his final move. He straightened his tie, forced a smirk, and spoke into the camera as if he was already preparing the clip for social media. Well, he said, voice dripping with calculated casualness. If you're so honest about everything, let's talk about love. The cheers stopped instantly, as if someone had pressed mute on the entire room. Even the camera crew froze. The producer behind the glass leaned forward with interest. This wasn't an accident. This was the ambush Ethan had been saving. The one he believed would finally rattle me. He leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on mine. There have been rumors for years, he continued. Dating scandals, secret relationships, hidden girlfriends, breakups, reconciliations, the whole K-pop romantic circus. So, here's the question people want answered. Are you in love? Laid. It was the type of question designed to destroy an idol's image. If I said yes, headlines would explode. If I said no, people would accuse me of lying. If I dodged it, the host would claim victory. But what Ethan didn't understand was that I wasn't afraid of the truth. I was only careful with it. I didn't rush to answer. I took a breath, looked around the studio, and let myself feel the weight of millions of people who would be watching. Then, softly, I asked, what do you think love means to me? The question stunned him. It wasn't defensive, it wasn't evasive. It turned the pressure back on him without aggression. He shifted in his chair, eyebrows raised. Well, he said, love changes careers. Love ends contracts. love destroys groups. Isn't that how it works in the entertainment industry? I shook my head. That's what love looks like when people treat each other like products, I answered. Not when they treat each other like humans. The audience murmured. That line reached deeper than anyone expected. Ethan leaned forward again, refusing to lose control. Okay, fine, he demanded. Then tell us, are you in love? I let that sit for a moment before finishing. And when someone becomes important to me, the world doesn't get to take them away. The studio erupted again, louder than before, a full standing ovation. And then, the moment that destroyed Ethan's authority completely, members of the audience started chanting, Taehyung, Taehyung, Taehyung. Thank you, Army, for standing with me through every challenge and every stage. Tonight wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about truth, honesty, and staying true to ourselves. Remember, it's okay to take your time, speak your mind, and love without fear. Together, we keep growing, we keep believing, and we keep shining. I couldn't have done it without you.